I'll start, sir.
Yeah, hi everyone. So today we are going to discuss a case presentation by Nicola.
I'll start, sir.
Hi everyone. So today we are going to discuss a case presentation by Nicola. Nicola?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I changed the presentation slide. I mean it as a groin swelling.
Okay, sir.
So that's how you are to present.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we are not going to discuss
I changed
hernia.
the presentations.
We are going to discuss as a groin swelling. Then we'll discuss about the hernia.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, we'll start. People will go on to join. Some disturbance is there in the audio. I request everybody to mute yourself. And when you have any questions or queries or some explanation you want to see, you can unmute yourself and speak. Okay, Nicola?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can start.
Mr. R, 70 years old gentleman who works as a manual laborer residing in Shivaji Nagar, belonging to upper lower class according to modified Kupuswamy classification, was examined on 10th February 2020. He presents with chief complaints of swelling in the left groin since 6 months and pain abdomen since 6 months.
Okay.
History of present illness. Patient was apparently well 6 months ago when he noticed a swelling in his left groin while taking a bath. The swelling was insidious in onset, initially small in size, and gradually progressed to the present size of about 4 cross 4 centimeter. It aggravates on standing and coughing and reduces on lying down. Disappears on lying down. History of pain in left lower abdomen in 6 months, dragging type of pain which is present on exertion, walking, and relieves at rest.
Okay. At this point, one clarification is it's always better to have swelling in a left groin is fine. Pain abdomen since 6 months, uh, it's not advisable, I would say, because see, there are so many ministers in cabinet. There is only one chief minister. You understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. So means what I want to say is it should aid you to make a provisional diagnosis. So you adding pain abdomen into chief complaints will uh, make more of a confusion rather than contributory for your diagnosis. Because
Okay.
swelling in the left groin and pain since 6 months is really significant. Okay, because patients tell a lot of things like they will tell when they went to marriage it started he noticed and then nearing his son's some function he noticed there is some increasing swelling all those things. So those things we logically we edit, though we tell we have to speak in Das means according to Das we have to tell in patient's own words. We nicely edit it and will not tell, is it not? So like
Okay.
that only, for some psychological reasons also patients want to uh, make the doctor feel that their symptoms are very serious. So they will tell means severe pain, he could not manage, all those things. So when he tells and the same pain is there from 6 months, you should logically think if it is so severe, he will not wait for 6 months to come to hospital, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he might tell, but in exam, if you put the pain abdomen in your chief complaint, you are expected to give explanation to the chief complaint at the end, and you have to address that in your treatment.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Okay, so means I saw the present history. That pain abdomen after two slides, it just vanishes. Yeah, so that's why you should not put all the complaints. Means you generally have the habit from general medicine. Usually there will be four or five chief complaints in an order. So here chief complaint will be for the diagnosis. All other things means probably if he has noticed this swelling when he had a pain abdomen episode, you can as well put swelling as the main complaint, and he noticed when he had certain pain due to some injury or whatever, and then make it as a one of the complaint, not the chief complaint.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Now, in present illness, the pain abdomen, what is the importance of pain abdomen here?
According to the HOPI, we can suspect it as a hernia. So in a hernia,
No,
pain
or
can,
pain, only pain,
sir,
only pain abdomen.
causes for pain abdomen.
Yeah, 6 months pain abdomen.
Because he noticed the swelling, it can be psychological, or if it is
Yeah, see this
full of,
that is more logical, but you cannot tell in the exam.
because of full of the mesentery,
Yeah,
he can
those
have.
are the things only you can give some explanation and try to escape from the question. That's all. That is usually that won't come to a level of pain. It is more of a subjective sensation or dragging sensation or a pulling sensation. It is more of a sensitive issue rather than objective to tell it is pain abdomen. Pain abdomen, differential diagnosis will be enormous. So better not to put pain. Suppose this patient has pain from last 1 month. So what is your explanation?
It can be because of complication of obstruction or strangulation.
Yeah. So we generally think pain abdomen is indicator of severity or increasing severity of the disease. So that's why little judicial use of pain abdomen. Okay. Yeah.
There is no history of straining during micturition, increased frequency of micturition, straining during defecation, chronic cough, vomiting, abdominal distension, and obstipation.
Okay. Why vomiting and abdominal distension?
So this I wanted to clarify because these signify obstruction or strangulation, but because the swelling anyway disappears on lying down, we already know that it is not complicated. So I didn't know if we should add this history or not.
You can add, no problem. So logically, when you take history, when you are telling about negative history, always we should concentrate more on the uh, etiological factors in the initial parts, then to know the severity, then means associated any complications if you want to rule out. Like suppose you are taking a thyroid disease, etiology, you will take some history, some history for euthyroid, hyperthyroid, then complications. So like that only here see, because in the history when you tell it reduces on lying down and increases on straining, already you made a diagnosis almost.
Mm.
So rest of the things is almost like a ritual. You want to make it more refined. So though at this point you should know history means the hernia in exams is the most often sought question, but it's very difficult to get out of the questions in inguinal hernia. Means you are expected to know everything in inguinal hernia. That is one disadvantage for students. Okay. Yeah. So here in the negative history, you asked all these questions to rule out what?
Causes, what could have led to him having hernia?
Yeah. So by this time you should know that there are no cause for hernia as such. There are so many risk factors, and they all put together means there is not usually there will be no single cause for inguinal hernia. So here you wanted to rule out all those history which can increase the intra-abdominal pressure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Past history, no history of similar complaints in the past, not a known case of hypertension, diabetes mellitus, no history of tuberculosis, asthma, chronic bronchitis, no past surgeries.
So last time only we discussed we should not put the hypertension and diabetes in past history. So better always to put in the uh, present history. Means somehow it is coming to past means either you put it at the last of the presence history. That should be one.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Family history, not contributory.
Did you
Or should
think it
we
is?
write no history of?
Yeah, no problem. No, that's fine. But
Yes.
always, usually there is undergraduate examination. There is a blessing that you should, if you tell anything extra, it is digested. If you tell something little less, still it's okay. But currently, if there are any PGs online, if you tell family history not contributory, the immediate next question will be what would be the contributory history you would like?
Collagen disorders.
Yeah. So I would have already told this is again one loose point in the history which you would generally tell to get out of the question. If I ask the collagen vascular disorders, what will be the presenting feature of collagen vascular disorders? You don't know, or at least you are not prepared for it. Is it not? It is more of the vascular manifestations with which patient comes to the hospital rather than collagen disorders. Unless there are some muscular dystrophies, neurological related muscular dystrophies or weaknesses with which the patient comes with hernia. But collagen vascular disease is familial, though some of the muscular disorders are also familial. But the inguinal hernia presenting complaint for those disorders is still rare. But if you got caught in the questions of family history, yes, collagen vascular disorder is your rescuer. You can tell and come out, but you should know. Means uh, a good history. If you want to really take family history at this point, you should ask about any familial disorders of the family, mainly muscular and neurological.
Okay.
Not ask, did your father also have inguinal hernia, mother also had. That is not the history to be taken. Yeah.
Personal history, he has a normal appetite, follows a vegetarian diet, undisturbed sleep, a regular bowel and bladder movements. He is not a smoker or alcoholic.
If he's a smoker, what will you add?
Huh?
If he was a smoker, what will you add in this part?
Pack years.
Yeah, you should tell about pack years. If he is alcoholic, you should ask how frequently he has alcohol. Means whether he is an occasional alcoholic or a social drinker, or he is a alcoholic. Means uh, by habit, habitually he is alcoholic. And how many years, how much he consumes per day. So that is there.
Patient is not on medications currently, no history of allergy to drugs.
What medications are you interested in?
With this, I asked in general, uh, or if he has been treated for hernia before by alternate systems of medicine also.
Hmm, alternate system medications means.
Okay, not medication.
Yeah, so you are asked about medications. That means probably you are asking some oral medications or injectables. So, what medications will you be interested in knowing? It's good that you have taken drug history. It is very important. Usually, in exams, it is usually forgotten. Somehow, drug history is usually forgotten by undergraduates, but you have taken it. It's good. But what medications will you be interested in knowing?
So maybe if he is going for surgery, any anticoagulants should be stopped.
Yeah. So not only the disease specific drugs, any drugs, any medication she is on, like diabetic medications or hypertensive medication, she is hypertensive and diabetic, suppose, or even prostate related medications. That is also important, though it does not cause hernia or you are not going to do anything about that medication. You would like to know if he is taking that medication, then you'll understand that um, the hernia is not really the issue. You should treat the prostate problem first, then come to hernia. All those medication history is also important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Summary: a 70-year-old male manual laborer with no known comorbidities presents with complaints of swelling in left groin since 6 months, which aggravates on standing and disappears on lying down and is associated with dragging pain in the lower abdomen. No history suggestive of obstruction or strangulation. It's probably uncomplicated left-sided inguinal hernia.
Okay. So the summary, uh, better not to write in the case sheet in exams. You are not expected to summarize at the end of the history also unless asked.
Okay,
Usually what happens is sometimes when you summarize, you would have already come to a diagnosis, like now you have already come to a diagnosis, it is inguinal hernia, no obstruction, no strangulation, uncomplicated, everything you have already done.
Mm.
So the next line of questions might become difficult if you already announce that you have done the diagnosis.
Mm.
Not only this case, any case.
Mm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So in case sheet, it is not customary to write the summary as such. Case sheet summary can be omitted. Usually, sometimes when the questions have gone this way and that way out of the case or something like that, then the examiner or the other examiner not listening to you or not present at that point will come later, something like that. Then usually they will ask you to summarize. Otherwise, if you are going in a flow, usually summarization is not required. As I told, it might become a little difficult later. They will change the line of questions listening to your summary.
General physical examination. A 70-year-old gentleman, moderately built and moderately nourished, conscious, alert, well oriented to time placing person, was examined in supine position after obtaining consent. Karnofsky performance status 90.
Okay. Here you should also use some terminologies like uh, it's good that you use gentleman, all those, but here this is general physical examination, your area. You cannot conclude he is 70 years. Can you conclude? No. So
About
what you should, yeah. So here you should tell he is an adult or he is an elderly adult. So in adult age group, he is elderly. He looks elderly. That's what is the general physical examination you want to see. Suppose he tells, like it happens usually in pediatrics, sometimes the mother tells the child is 10 years, but the child is looking like 2 years. It happens, is it not? Sometimes the mother tells the child is like 5 years, but the child looks like an adult. So some disorders are there. So that takes importance there. Here you should just tell he's an adult and he octogen means he's a elderly adult, geriatric group. Yeah, moderately built. All those things are fine.
vitals, pulse 74 beats per minute, regular rhythm, normal character, good volume, respiratory rate 18 cycles per minute, blood pressure 120 over 80 millimeter of mercury, measured in right arm in sitting position. Patient is clinically afebrile. He weighs 70 kilos and is 178 centimeter tall. His BMI is 22.1, which falls under the normal range. General physical examination, pallor, icterus, cyanosis, clubbing, generalized lymphadenopathy, pedal edema not present.
Okay.
Local examination of the inguinoscrotal region. After obtaining consent, patient is exposed from nipple to mid-thigh and is examined in standing position.
Yeah. So here it is important for you to tell what is the exposure because sometimes they will tell from umbilicus. There are some instances where they will ask. Usually, we would also like to see umbilical hernia is present or not. Usually, it will be there at some age group. If there is some weakness somewhere, if really the intra-abdominal pressure is the cause, it will have the same effect on the umbilicus also. So it's better to tell nipple to knees or nipple to mid thighs. That's fine.
Inspection. A solitary swelling of size 4 cross 4 centimeters, spherical in shape, is seen in the left inguinal region extending from above the medial side of mid-inguinal point to the root of scrotum. Surface of the swelling appears smooth and skin over the swelling is normal. No visible peristalsis is seen. Impulse on coughing is seen over the swelling. On lying down, the swelling reduces completely. Right side appears normal.
What is your comment on cough impulse?
Sir,
Cough impulse. What is the comment?
when asked to cough,
Yeah.
the uh, swelling, I mean, we could see the impulse.
Hmm. But how you should comment in the exam about cough impulse?
Present,
Yeah.
um,
What else?
expansile cough impulse.
Yeah, that is more important. If you put your hand over your abdomen and cough, you definitely will get the impulse. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, that is cough impulse. Expansile cough impulse of a localized region will tell that there is some problem there, and it is usually hernia. So you
Okay.
should use expansile cough impulse is seen.
Okay.
Okay. Otherwise, impulse on coughing is an incomplete uh,
Mm.
uh, uh, observation. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And on lying down, swelling reduces completely. You should add word spontaneously, means without your
Mm.
manipulation. Spontaneous reduction is important and completely. Yeah.
Palpation. A solitary swelling measuring 4 cross 4 centimeter is felt in the left inguinal region extending from medial side of
Before
mid-inguinal.
that, inspection,
Yes, sir.
you told inspection of inguinoscrotal region, yes?
Yes, sir.
But inspection you did only on the inguinal region. You went on to palpation.
That examination of genitalia I added at the end, so I didn't know if I have to.
No, you have already mentioned it is the inguinoscrotal region.
Mm.
So already you have committed that you are going to tell about inguinal and scrotal. Yeah, so you have to tell both at this point. Inspection,
Yes.
you should add. Somebody is asking you if you can comment on cough impulse in inspection. Yes, you can add. You can tell it is expansion. Okay.
Solitary swelling measuring 4 cross 4 centimeter is felt in the left inguinal region extending from medial side of the mid-inguinal point in the root of the scrotum. It is non-tender and there is no local rise of temperature over the swelling. Surface of the swelling is smooth, soft, elastic in consistency. It is not possible to get above the swelling. The swelling is reducible. An expansile impulse on coughing is felt over the swelling. After reduction of the swelling, the following tests were performed. Siemens test, an impulse is felt on the middle finger. Ring invagination test was not done because the patient was not compliant. Ring occlusion test, a bulge is seen medial to the occluding finger and right side is normal on palpation.
Okay. So first test usually done is ring occlusion test.
Oh, okay, sir.
Okay, first you should mention about ring occlusion test, and it's wise to tell about deep ring occlusion test.
Deep ring.
Yeah, that is the first test you do.
Yes, sir.
So there you will tell whether it is medial hernia or lateral hernia.
Mm.
Okay. What are the things? What are the false positives in that ring occlusion test?
Sir, if the deep ring is very big and
Yeah, number
because
one,
we
deep
use
ring
our
is
thumb
correct.
to occlude, we
Correct.
can't occlude it completely.
Correct.
And in cases of pantaloon hernia, when there is both direct and indirect
Correct.
component, you'll still get a bulge.
Correct. In that both things you will get um, false positives. So that is ring occlusion test. Then ring invagination test, though it is not really recommended these days. As an undergraduate, you cannot tell I did not do. Okay, you have to do. You already because you have. I mean, this is not really a painful test or a very uncomfortable. Means you have already done. You will see the patient's whether he has phimosis, he has urethral stricture, everything you will see. And for his ring invagination, putting one finger and just checking, he is not cooperating. That usually does not go very well. Uh, as a PG, somebody tells that he has not done, somehow they're accepting because some books in the PG level they give nowadays it is not done.
Okay.
For UG, you should do. Okay,
Okay.
unless he is really not cooperative. What happens is if you develop the habit of telling you are not done, usually that only carries in the exam, and usually in the exams there will be very small number of patients, and every patient they would have gone and done. Some examiners will do every test on the patient and they know.
Mm.
And sometimes if you tell like that, they will ask you to go and do on the patient with them watching you. uh, that will become more difficult. Means even if you do the test, there are sometimes some finger you have put some little angle that side this side. Means you should not make the examiner come with you and examine. That's not very good actually. Yeah,
Okay.
it little brings down the uh, morale for you for presentation. So better not to. You develop the habit of taking the patients into confidence and do it. You tell him that it's not painful. I'm just going to do a small test. It's not provided you should cut your nails, all those things. I should not tell.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So though anyway, it is not done. Suppose you are done. What are the things you would have noticed? Why it is done actually?
Sir, we find out if it is an indirect or a direct inguinal hernia. One
Right.
of the tests we do is ring invagination. The patient is made to lie supine, and we stand on the same side where we are examining, and we use the same hand. So usually little finger is used, and we go from the scrotum. So we invaginate, and we go to the superficial inguinal ring, which usually accepts 1 finger breadth. Then we rotate our fingers, and then we go inside. After that, again we rotate our fingers, and the patient is asked to cough. This is done after reduction of the swelling.
Why this
So when the
rotation of
patient,
finger inside the ring?
so that the we can feel it on the pulp and not on the
Yeah.
nails. It's more
Okay.
sensitive.
Yeah.
So when we ask the patient to cough, if we feel the impulse at the tip of our little finger, it means it's an indirect hernia. Or if we feel it on the pulp of the finger, it means it's a direct hernia.
Yeah. What other things you will also see in that particular test?
Uh, in ring invagination
Yes.
test, sir. Direction,
One is direction. Already you told from how the impulse is coming from which direction. But
maybe
actually,
superficial inguinal ring if it
yeah.
is dilated or
So the
not.
ring invagination, the what ring we are speaking is superficial inguinal ring invagination. So the what is invaginated is actually the skin. Skin is invaginated through superficial inguinal ring. Okay, sometimes there are some people who tell skin invagination test because it is not the ring which is invaginated, it is the skin. That's what the logic is. But invagination test, if you tell, that's more than enough. So there, it does not allow really one finger actually. It allows tip of the index finger. That's what the books tell. Tip of the index finger. So usually in indirect inguinal hernias, especially funicular and complete hernias, uh, this particular ring is a little patulous and it allows easily the whole finger will go inside. So here, suppose if you would have done the same test, the finger would not have gone in.
Hmm.
So you could have commented that you could not do the test since the superficial ring is not allowing the finger to get in. This is why, though the superficial inguinal ring is told to admit tip of the index finger, here in this test we use little finger, so that even with that near normal ring, the little finger can
Then,
go through. Otherwise, you
yes,
cannot go and rotate and get the pulp and all those things. You cannot do.
yes,
If
sir.
possible, you do it. Otherwise, you can tell. Because this is 6 months. 6 months, and you have already told he has got pain abdomen. Pain abdomen comes, means the dragging pain comes when the contents are in the inguinal sac, that is hernial sac, and usually it is not reduced. If the contents are there for quite a long time outside the body in the hernial sac, then only the dragging type of pain comes. Dragging type of pain is very, very uncommon in direct inguinal hernia. It is for those people with a huge sac or a complete inguinal hernia. Those people will get dragging sensation. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And suppose he has dragging sensation, where do you think the sensation will be?
It will be usually near the umbilicus or
Yeah.
abdomen.
So usually it will be in the abdomen and they cannot actually tell where is the sensation. It is usually diffuse. They cannot pinpoint.
Mm.
It is because of the peritoneal stretch they will get the pain. Sometimes because of the contents getting stuck to the sac. Like sometimes momentum will get stuck to the sac for if it stays for a long time. So at that time they will get the dragging sensation or pain. And those are also not localized, they are more diffuse. Okay. So Zeeman test, what why it is done? Zeeman test.
To differentiate between yeah, among direct and femoral hernia.
Yeah. Okay.
Percussion, I was not able to appreciate if it was resonant or dulcet.
Okay, fine. Since it is a small globular swelling, uh, percussion will not be really so practical. But still, suppose if you want to do percussion, you should do with the contents not reduced. That
In
means,
standing position.
yeah, if the contents are not reducing even after lying down, fine, you can make him lie down and do. Otherwise, you should do in the standing position. So the guidelines is only in the standing position with the contents not reduced. Okay. So here, since it is only 4 centimeter swelling in the inguinal region, and usually in the suprapubic area there is a lot of fat. Percussion is not really so easy to do. So not done. Okay, fine.
Auscultation, no sounds were heard.
Okay. That I assume that auscultation is over the swelling.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Lymph, superficial inguinal group of lymph nodes were not enlarged.
Okay. You did not mention which side actually, but still, I assume it is both sides.
Yes.
You should specify because there in the swelling you already kept yourself to left side, and every
Yes,
time
sir.
you came to right side, you have mentioned it is right side is normal, right side is normal.
Yes,
So
sir.
here you have not mentioned the side, so I am assuming it is both sides.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Examination of genitalia, scrotum and testis normal. But I don't know if it's the right format to. I don't know if we have to write it in detail or just this. Penis appears normal. Position is not deviated. No strictures were felt.
Okay. Position is not deviated, fine. Means if it is deviated, you can tell. Otherwise, it's not really strictures. You should tell. And if there is any pinholmiatus, as you rightly mentioned, you have put a query, but if it is there, you have to mention. Means all these things you want to rule out any factors are there for the straining, so that
Yes, sir.
he increases the intra-abdominal pressure or not. That is why you are doing all this. Scrotum and testis normal is not the right way to put it. As I told earlier, you already told inguinoscrotal. So you
Scrotum.
should tell scrotum bilaterally symmetrical, means there is no swelling in one side of scrotum, and skin over the scrotum is showing normal rugosity, because sometimes in the complete inguinal hernia the rugosity is little sparse on that side compared to the other side. So after that palpation you will also see this is anyway not coming to scrotum. If it is coming to scrotum, you should tell testis is separately palpable or not palpable.
Yes.
And you'll also see if the testis is present both sides or not, because the swelling itself might be testis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is also there. And at this point, you should tell getting above the swelling and those things in the examination.
Yes.
Yeah.
Huh?
So because why I told this, better not to comment on anything as normal.
Okay, sir.
Because in medical terminologies, normal is really terminology which you generally means will tell normal range, normal limit. Okay, so
Mm.
means you cannot tell this is the position which is normal.
Okay, sir.
This
Okay.
is the size which is normal. So that's why test is when you are telling either it is separately palpable from the swelling or not, and
Mm.
bilaterally symmetrical, or it is one side is little bigger or smaller, atrophied. Those things are commented. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Systemic examination per abdomen soft, non-tender, no organomegaly, tone of the abdomen is normal. Per rectal examination is not done. Cardiovascular system S1 S2 heart sounds are normally heard, no murmurs. Respiratory system normal vesicular breath sounds are heard. Central nervous system no deficit.
Okay. Again, per rectal examination you did not do. Why? Generally they
Never.
don't do. No,
Huh?
I am asking because generally they don't do, and it is okay with the exam. In exam, if you tell per rectal examination not done, it's still fine. But here, uh, many of the people are not doing, but it is better you should start doing for at least such cases,
Okay.
because 4.5 years of your medical degree, you do not put your finger in any rectum. Suddenly you pass the ninth term and you are an intern and you are going to uh, diagnose, dispose cases of anorectal disorders, which are very common, bleeding PR, piles, fistula, fissure, everything. And for every case, almost you have to do a per rectal examination when you become an intern. So suddenly you cannot do, master the art of examining. So better you should start doing in your student days. Okay. Tone of the abdomen is normal. So means how did you check for that?
Uh, One method is see him from side and if the lower abdomen is protruded. Second is make him lie supine and ask him to raise his shoulders or legs and check for malgaining bulging.
Yeah, you check for Malgagnin bulges if they are there or not. So what
Yes,
I
sir.
would advise is, if there are Malgagnin bulges, you tell it is there. If it is not there, you tell it is not there. That's fine.
Okay.
So because your comment is tone of abdomen is normal. I just now told it's better to avoid all these things as normal, all those things. Because for a 70-year man, what is the tone? You don't know, I don't know. Is it not?
Yes.
So it's not good to tell tone is normal, all those things. You wanted to see if the overall laxity of the muscle, abdominal musculature is there, you will see that there are some bulges, localized bulges. So that is there or not there, that should be fine. Okay. Okay.
Summary: 70-year-old gentleman, manual laborer with no known comorbidities, presents with complaints of swelling in the left groins in 6 months, which increases on standing and on exertion and reduces on lying down, associated with dragging type of pain. On examination, a solitary spherical 4 cross 4 centimeter swelling extending from medial side of mid-inguinal point in the root of scrotum, reducible, soft and elastic in consistency, with an expansile impulse on coughing. Impulse felt on middle finger in Siemens test and deep ring occlusion test shows a swelling medial to the occluding finger. It is probably a case of uncomplicated left inguinal hernia.
Okay. This is summary. Okay. Diagnosis is here. Fine.
This is a case of direct inguinal hernia on the left side, incomplete, reducible, uncomplicated, probably containing intestine.
Okay. So why do you think this swelling is a hernia?
Uh, because in the history and examination, we found out that it reduces
Yeah.
on lying down,
So any
and there
swelling
is
which has the
expansile.
reducibility is a hernia. That is a classical sign of any swelling to be called as hernia. So what is the classical sign for any vascular swelling?
Compress, compressible, sir. So when we tested the disappear, but when we uh, And in releasing finger, he'll come back again.
ఎట్లా బెటర్ చేయొచ్చు
Okay. Sandhya, you have to mute yourself. Sandhya, you have to mute yourself. Yeah. So, vascular swelling, I didn't get you.
So vascular swellings are compressible. So when we press
Yeah.
it will go and disappear. But when we release our fingers, it comes back again.
Correct. Now, see, you get the habit of uh, um, getting dialogues like exam going students, all those. Okay. So, when the question is asked about vascular swelling, I did not ask you about arterial swelling or a venous swelling. Okay. Rightly, you told compressibility is for vascular swelling, pulsatility is for arterial.
Okay.
Yeah. And compressibility and pulsatility is for arterial. Only compressible swelling is for venous and capillary, some things like hemangiomas, all this. Okay. So pulsatility is usually somehow forgotten. That's why. Okay. Reducibility and compressibility. Then you have made diagnosis of inguinal hernia. On what basis?
One is on the basis of its location.
Okay.
And also in Siemens test, we differentiated it from femoral hernia.
Okay.
And
How did you differentiate? Only on Zeeman test is it okay to tell that it is not a femoral hernia? What are the points against femoral hernia or towards inguinal hernia?
against femoral hernia is its location. Femoral hernia is usually below and lateral to the pubic tubercle. This is above the inguinal ligament. And
Okay.
then on
No.
Siemens test,
See, here you are not going to see pubic, see waterpectin, pubis, inguinal ligament, all those. So don't tell inguinal ligament, all those. So here on inspection, the swelling is above the inguinal crease. Okay.
yes,
Femoral hernia usually will be just below the inguinal crease.
yes, sir.
Okay. So don't tell inguinal ligament and all. So there is some confusion about classically in DAS and the textbooks it is given femoral hernia is below and lateral to pubic tubercle and inguinal hernia is above and medial to pubic tubercle. So if you go and examine any pubic tubercle, it will be hardly 1.5 to 2 centimeter from the midline,
Yes, sir.
and medial to that, usually you don't see any swelling at all. Even if it is a large inguinal hernia, still it won't come. So probably there are some hernias like suprapubic hernias or some vascular hernias which will come in that region, which will be probably medial. But somehow, age-old dictum, it is coming from, I don't know when it has started. So better stick on to inguinal crease below and above,
Yes, sir.
and other tests. You add on to other tests like Zeeman and all those things. Okay. Yeah. So direct on basis of
Sir,
direct
sorry, sir.
inguinal hernia.
The main test, most sensitive, is the deep ring occlusion test. We
Yeah.
found the bulge medial to the occluding finger.
Right.
Other than that, again on Siemens test on the middle finger. Then in old age, direct hernias are more common than indirect hernias. And also on history, it reduces spontaneously on its own, which is usually a feature of direct hernia.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Direct inguinal hernia, left side. Reducible, already explained. Uncomplicated.
Uncomplicated because there is no history suggestive of obstruction and strangulation. It's reducible now.
What are the complications?
Starts with irreducibility,
Yes.
obstruction, strangulation.
Yes. Okay. Probably intestine you are told. Why?
So that is only on the basis of consistency, I told, because percussion and oscillatory findings I couldn't appreciate properly. So
Consistency, what you told? Soft.
and elastic.
Elastic. Okay. Elastic, you felt elastic really?
Somewhat I felt. So I didn't know if I have to add this in the
So
diagnosis.
you added your gut feeling and told it is intestine. Okay, fine. Anyway, it is a small inguinal hernia, so even if you cannot tell contents, it's fine. But anyway, you told it as intestine. That's also okay. Um, so you went off. Okay. So till now, any doubt is there? Means I went little fast. Anybody has any doubt till here? Because here usually it is one of your favorite cases to present, and more often it is presented. That's why I took the liberty that you don't have too many doubts. But still, there are some doubts. You can post it in chat section or you can ask directly. So nobody seems to have any doubt, or nobody is listening. Both of any of them can be true, but there are some questions which I did not ask. Like, means at this point they will start asking what is enterocele, what is Litter's hernia, Richter's hernia, Meckel's, Amayant's
Yes.
hernia, sliding hernia, pantaloon, Meidel's hernia. Means there are, you all know. Means I assume that all will be ready for those questions. So I just avoided those questions because anyway you are ready with answers. Uh, why is the last part easy to reduce in the intestine and first part easy to reduce in the momentum?
Or
Because
in
of its
moment,
nature. Tejas Babu, because of its nature. You already told intestine is more elastic and contents are more softer, so it is difficult. Because when you press against the abdominal wall, the contents go laterally rather than in one direction. Because it is very supple, so it spreads in the lateral side, so it is difficult. It becomes difficult. Any other doubts? Okay, here what are the etiological related factors you found out in this patient?
one is probably his age. His muscles might be lax. Second is he's been working as a manual laborer, so there can be increased intra-abdominal pressure because of his work.
Okay.
Other than that,
What are the etiological factors you can quote for inguinal hernia?
increased intra-abdominal pressure because of chronic cough or straining during defecation. It can be because of smoking, which can in turn lead to COPD, which can again increase intra-abdominal pressure, or it can be obesity is also a risk factor. And
Why obesity is a risk factor?
um,
You're correct. Obesity is a risk factor for inguinal hernia. Why?
I'm not sure.
The abdomen, not only abdomen, all the muscles are usually fat laden or infiltrated by fat cells. So if you happen to come to OT for any laparotomy or emergency laparotomies, when you open and when you are closing, you can directly see, or even for an obese man, an inguinal hernia surgery, an open surgery is being done, you can directly see the muscles are interspersed with fat cells. So that makes the musculature weak. Though they are bloated up, the bulk of the muscle is not really true. In between there are fats. So that makes it weak. The integrity of the muscle is weaker. Why chronic cough is a risk factor for inguinal hernia?
Increased intra-abdominal pressure while coughing.
COPD,
For a
for example.
yes, sir.
COPD is a risk factor for inguinal hernia, yes or no?
Yes,
Why?
there is because if he's been coughing for so long, it means there is higher intra-abdominal pressure.
Okay.
And if it's smoking, then it can be due to COPD or metastatic emphysema cholangitis.
Yeah. Okay. Why I ask this question? Suppose if you are doing gym exercises. Suppose imagine you are doing a gym exercises. What will happen to the muscles? They will become more strong or more weak.
Longer.
So if you imagine a chronic cougher who is really coughing, what do you think the muscles will be? More relaxed or more strong? Is it not? Okay. And usually the cough which you are talking is not that violent cough. They are just no coughers. Smokers, they keep coughing.
Mm.
But it's not a violent cough.
Mm.
So those coughs which have violent cough or continuous coughing for pretty long time, they will have no, the intra-abdominal pressure which gets raised, and if there is any laxity at some point or deep inguinal ring, that will give way at some point. That is the mechanism usually. But more accepted theory is it's more of the imbalance between the enzymes like elastase,
Elastase.
anti-elastase, collagenase, anti-collagenase, all those enzymes or there is mismatch both in the respiratory tract and overall. So that is the explanation which is taken nowadays. Same way in smokers. Just because he smokes, it is not something related to nicotine or brand of the cigarette which really is causing inguinal hernia or the cough. It is the nicotine's effect on the system which makes the muscles weak, overall muscles weak. That's why these things are coming. Okay. Yeah. So how do you proceed?
The hernia is usually a clinical diagnosis, so we don't
Correct.
need many investigations. Preoperative screening, which is done normally, includes CBC, blood grouping, RH typing, sugars, chest X-ray, ECG, serology. We can do USG abdomen and pelvis to check for benign prostatic hypertrophy
We
or
can do, you have to do. He is a 70-year man. You have to do.
we have to do
What are the things you are going to see in that?
this.
What are the things you would like to see in a report of ultrasound abdomen and pelvis?
In this person, sir,
Yeah.
we look for prostate, um, post-voidal residual urine if it
Yeah.
is increased.
What prostate you look for? Prostate means what will you look?
Median lobe, we can't feel it on rectal examination.
No, in ultrasound, if there is a prostatomegaly,
Legally,
yeah, usually they will tell in centimeters or they will means indirectly tell by centimeter, they convert into weight. They will tell put it in grams or cc. Cc is volume. Means the measurements, dimensions are taken and the volume is calculated and put. And the volume of the residual urine in the urinary bladder, which indirectly tells there is urinary tract narrowing because of prostate. All these things we will see. If there is a prostate enlargement, they will also see whether it is uniform or it is irregular type of enlargement, and is there any calcification. All those things they will see to rule out malignancy. Because you are not going to do an FNSE or something to tell benign prostatic hyperplasia. So usually it is a ultrasound finding. Usually ultrasound features itself can tell it is more of a benign or malignant pathology. Yeah. So
Should I
rest
add
everything
any
you
other
will do.
investigation?
Yeah, yeah.
Did we add any other investigations
No,
apart
nothing is
from
right. Nothing is right. For because he is aged, you would like to see his chest X-ray and ECG for comorbid conditions. That is basic thing. All other things for only anesthetic freshness. Yeah.
management in this patient surgery,
Hmm.
uh, hernioplasty, Lichtenstein tension-free mesh repair.
What is LTF?
Like, Lichtenstein tension-free mesh repair.
What is Liechtenstein?
The place,
Yeah, it is a place, but it happens also to be a
name,
surgeon's name, Irving Liechtenstein. Okay. Okay. Why do you think that is the surgery for him?
so out of the three, I mean, herniatomy, refi, and plasty, herniatomy will be only done in children, and hernioplasty has a better prognosis than herniorrhaphy because we use a mesh, so recurrence rate will be lesser.
Yeah. So it's not wise to tell prognosis and all. Prognosis is usually word used in end-stage diseases or malignancy. So here the complication rate or recurrence rate you can quote. Uh, More than recurrence rate, it is not really good to tell recurrence rate is high in herniorrhaphy, because a herniorrhaphy done is having almost equal, or even some centers it is lesser recurrence rate, like in Mayo Clinic, Shouldice Clinic, the recurrence rate for uh, herniorrhaphy is lesser compared to hernioplasty. Okay, so what you can tell is he is a already a elderly man. He would like to have a reinforced inguinal wall rather than repaired wall.
Yes, sir.
So that is a better answer. So what are the other things? What is a funicular hernia?
Funicular is a type of incomplete hernia where it has crossed the superficial inguinal ring, but it hasn't gone till the bottom of, I mean, in the base of the scrotum.
So it is a classical incomplete inguinal hernia. So this particular inguinal hernia which you presented is
Incomplete.
it is incomplete. What is the terminology to be used? It has not crossed the superficial inguinal ring.
Bubonose.
Yeah, it is a bubonocoel. What is a bubo?
Uh, Plaque. There are
Correct. In plague, what happened?
lymph node.
Yeah, there were lymph nodal enlargement at the plague time. Those were looking almost same big lymph nodes in the inguinal region. So bubonocoel means seal is a hernia or a sac. So a sac which looks like bubo. So it is bubonocoel. Okay. So means why I asked this, there were earlier there were some investigations called herniography. Have you heard of herniography?
Yes, sir, but I don't exactly know what it is.
Yeah, herniography was there earlier. A dye was injected to the peritoneal cavity near the somewhere near the inguinal region, and patient was allowed to stand so that the dye will percolate or come into the hernial sac, and a radiograph is taken to see the dye in the inguinal canal till where it is reached, all those things. So later they found out that doing all those circuits was not really necessary for making such simple diagnosis, so they left it. Okay. So hernia earlier they were doing historic time funiculectomy. There were some things. No, they used to chop off the hernia.
Mm.
So that was also done. So that is of only uh, historic impact. So here you want to do Liechtenstein's tension-free hernioplasty. What anesthesia you want?
Where in Victoria, I've seen they use spinal anesthesia, but local can also be used.
Yeah, you have freedom to tell. It can be done in both local and regional anesthesia. Okay. There are some local anesthesia, local infiltration. There are some nerve blocks. There is something called a field block.
Mm.
Then regional anesthesia as a spinal block. Okay. So at this point, usually they will ask what are the other things, and usually laparoscopic methods are done here or not, and your answer will be yes, and you would not have told.
Yeah.
At this point, usually examiner asks you whether they do laparoscopic repairs in your hospital, yes or no.
Uh,
For inguinal hernia, laparoscopic repairs are done at Victoria Hospital or no?
Lingual, I haven't seen any
You
slide.
haven't seen. Okay, they are doing already. All are doing. So you should give an option, but you are given one option here. There are people who give options to examiners like herniatomy, herniorrhaphy, hernioplasty. That is not a good option to give on. So one is hernioplasty, next is laparoscopic repair, depending on. Suppose you are told only hernioplasty, still you can tell the examiner, since it is a unilateral inguinal hernia and is a elderly male, we can consider hernioplasty on one side open, because laparoscopy repair requires general anesthesia. Fitness is more difficult. This can be done under local anesthesia, and it is laparoscopy is gold standard for bilateral inguinal hernia. Here it is unilateral, uncomplicated inguinal hernia. So what is herniorrhaphies? What are the herniorrhaphies, you know?
Modified Pessini's shoulders and Tasarda tension tissue.
Mm. Don't tell about Desarda in the exams. So better to tell Bassini Soldi. There is another technique called Little's repair. Have you heard of what is Little's repair?
Uh, the suture, I mean, deep inguinal ring, if it is, we narrow the deep inguinal.
Yeah, narrowing of the deep inguinal ring by putting extra sutures. So that is called Little's repair. What is darning?
Continuous sutures are put between conjoint tendon and
It is not any conjoint tendon inguinal, just wherever the area is weak, you are going to run continuous sutures here and there, make it a almost intraoperative preparation of mesh.
okay.
Yeah, just something like that, so that that particular suture material will incite the fibrosis, and that gives the strength to the inguinal wall. So what is Bassini's repair?
Here in Bassini's repair, the conjoint tendon is sutured to the inguinal ligament.
Okay, how? Okay, then
Using
in
so that
shoulders.
shoulders is three-layer double breasting is done. And the
Okay, which layers?
first is fascia transversalis
Uh,
double breasting. Then second is conjoint tendon to inguinal ligament. Then external oblique aponeurosis.
okay, which instincts?
There we place a mesh to reinforce the
So where are the
strength of the
sutures? Are they sutured? Conjoint tendon and inguinal ligament?
the mesh is sutured to inguinal ligament, conjoint tendon, and pubic tubercle.
Okay, where and all it is fixed? The mesh is fixed.
Uh, Pubic tubercle, conjoint tendon, and inguinal ligament near the deep ring. And then we make a slit in the mesh for the spermatic cord to pass through.
Okay. So usually the first bite will be in the area of pubic tubercle. Then medially it goes usually 1.5 to 2 centimeters medial to that, and at that area you will get rectus sheath. Upper lateral thing you will get conjoint tendon, and then lower is inguinal ligament. What is McWay's repair?
Uh,
Have you heard?
Yes, sir, I forgot.
Okay. So you should remember McWay's-Cooper's ligament repair. Okay, McWay's-Cooper's ligament repair. So the same mesh or same suture, instead of taking into the inguinal ligament, if the suture line goes to Cooper's ligament, then it becomes McWay's repair. What is the advantage?
Even femoral hernias can be.
Yeah, it is more posterior repair. So femoral ring is made anterior to the repaired area. So usually the contents will not have any space to come into the femoral ring area. So what is the logic of doing a tension-free repair? What is tension-free in this?
Sir, in referee, sir, we are because conjoint tendon and inguinal ligament are brought together. There is more tension because it was earlier apart. Here we are just placing a mesh. Increased tension can again lead to recurrence.
What tension where?
Posterior inguinal wall.
Yes. So usually I will tell always any question in inguinal hernia, the answer is posterior inguinal wall. So usually in earlier we used to have CET, now it is NEET. There were some lessons told as blind lessons, Kurud Pata. So if you see, usually it was done in mathematics where if you see a particular denominator, the answer is 0. If you see any particular denominator, the answer is 1. So that was the time saving lessons we learned. So something like that. In inguinal hernia, any question, the answer is posterior inguinal wall. Okay, keep it in mind. Any answer which you don't know, if you know, very well. If you don't know, as usually normal human beings, sometimes you forget, and usually in the tense situations like university exam, you obviously forget. So the answer is always posterior inguinal wall. Okay, so let us do some training like what is inguinal hernia.
Protrusion of inguinal hernia.
Yeah.
Protrusion of viscus or a part of viscus through the posterior inguinal
Yes.
wall.
Okay. So what is herniorrhaphy?
Repair of posterior inguinal wall,
Right. So hernioplasty,
strengthening the
yeah,
posterior inguinal
reinforcement of posterior inguinal wall.
reinforcement.
So that way, so always the answer is posterior inguinal wall. So what is posterior inguinal wall is the next question. What is the posterior inguinal wall? Posterior inguinal wall has internal oblique transverse abdominis with its fascia, like transversalis fascia. Okay. Obviously, at some point it becomes conjoint tendon. I need not tell that. Both of them, when it join conjoint tendon, that also is posterior inguinal wall. So to remember, two muscles and one fascia with their fascia. So usually internal oblique does not have a strong fascia. That's why we don't tell fascia transversalis and fascia. I mean transversalis abdominis and internal oblique put together forms posterior inguinal wall. Okay. So what is Bassinis repair? You told.
Conjoint tendon is sutured to the inguinal ligament.
Yeah, so that is there. Why I asked that particular question is there is something called Bassinis original and there is modified Bassinis.
Posterior inguinal wall is cut to, I mean, in
Yeah.
size of
So
base.
Bassinis repair, posterior inguinal wall is opened and then closed. That was original Bassini. So he described using steel wires and going from medial to lateral, lateral to medial, all those things were there. Then it changed to nylon, all those things are there. Whatever it is, original Bassini opened the posterior inguinal wall and sutured it. All those repair who do not open the posterior inguinal wall are called modified
Modified.
Bassini's repair. Anything if you do not open the muscle posterior inguinal wall is called modified Bassinis. So in Lichtenstein's tension-free hernioplasty, you are not opening the posterior inguinal wall. So by default, that also is modified Besney's technique. So modified Besney technique is not a single surgery. All the surgeries put together when you do not open the posterior inguinal wall is called modified Besney. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So here tension free, what is tension free in Lichtenstein tension free?
Posterior inguinal.
Yeah. So always the answer is the same, posterior inguinal wall. Okay. So only some things like herniatomy, you cannot tell no herniatomy is cutting the posterior inguinal wall. Okay, that is an exclusion. And in Scholdi's repair, as you told, there are 3 layers of double breasting, and all the 3 layers are not on the posterior inguinal wall. One layer is anterior inguinal wall, which is external oblique and external oblique. Okay, otherwise that also is posterior inguinal wall repair. So for all practical reasons, all those repairs are called tissue repairs, and other things are tension free repairs. Because if you tell tension repair, it is something you are disrespecting some age old good surgeries. That's why they don't want to tell tension repairs, they will tell tissue repairs. And all those things which are tension free are called tension free repairs. So what are the other tension free repairs you know?
Uh, Gilbert, Rivi-Stoppa's repair, then Gilbert plug. Right.
Okay, plug and patch, and Stoppa's repair, Rivis Stoppa's repair, all are tension free repairs, because here you are not pulling and struggling with the muscles. Since he is a 70-year man, can we mention as conservative management? No, no conservative management. You can have a doubt that he is 70 years, he might not be fit for surgery. That is why he has come to hospital, make him fit for surgery and do the surgery. If he is not fit for anesthesia, you do under local anesthesia. There is no excuse, there is no conservative management. Okay?
ರೈತರ దగ్గర ಮನಿ ಮಾಡ್ರಲ್ಲ ರೈತರಾಗಿರ್ತಾರೆ
Basavaraj, you have to mute. Basavaraj, you have to mute. Okay. Stoppa's repair. How do you do Stoppa's repair?
I just know that there's a pre-peritoneal mesh
Correct.
which is placed.
So why I asked this question? For placing the repair, for depending on the plane of the swelling, so plane of the mesh where it is placed, usually all the repairs are divided as anterior repairs or posterior repairs. Okay, what is the anterior and posterior? Again, posterior inguinal wall is the answer. Anterior to posterior inguinal wall, the mesh is placed. Posterior to posterior wall, posterior repair. Okay, so if you imagine all the repairs we did, everything was anterior to posterior inguinal wall. So they are all anterior repairs, and the tension-free hernioplasty, which is Lichtenstein's, which is followed, is also anterior repair. The posterior repairs are Stoppa's, Riv-Stoppa's, and laparoscopic methods. The plug and patch is something like it is in between. A small hole is there, and you plug the mesh, and it goes pre-peritoneal also, and it is outside also. So it does not really come into any of the types, but they are the posterior repairs. So the advantage of posterior repairs is you need not really fix the mesh to everywhere. Anterior repair, if you do not fix, the recurrence is almost certain. So that works on some principle called Pascal's law of pressure. In second year PUC, you would have read Boyle's law, Pascal's law, and Charles' law. So each fellow kept one as constant like pressure or temperature or volume. Yeah. So this Pascal's law is for pressures. The law tells the pressure exerted by the contents of a
Equal.
container is equal on all sides of the wall of the container. So if it is exerting pressure on the entire abdominal wall, it will also exert the same pressure on the mesh. So the mesh is anchored to the abdominal wall from behind. So that is why it does not allow it to migrate this way, that way. That is the idea of not having any fixations. That is one. Second one is, if you imagine a container and that container has a hole, and like suppose you imagine a vessel or a tank, a bathroom tank. Usually earlier days we used to have a tank in the bathroom for storage of water that usually have a small pipe at the bottom for cleaning purpose. After cleaning they will let out the water and all. So if that pipe is uh, let out or opened and you are given a mesh or a handkerchief to plug it, if you plug from outside and if you plug from inside, you can imagine the pressure exerted uh, requires lesser energy from your side to hold it if you put it inside the tank.
Mm.
That is posterior.
Mm.
If you put the same handkerchief from the outside, you have to use again one more stick and put some stone and hit it or something like that.
Mm.
But still it will have some water leakage.
Mm.
So that is the same principle used here also. Here the tank is the abdominal wall, all the contents. The water is replaced by contents of the abdomen, and that has a hole. So even a housemaid knows, no, plugging from outside requires more pressure, and chances of recurrence means chances of coming out is more. And you are going to put the mesh in the anterior, that is outside the tank. So you require more sutures. Even after doing all the best things, it can still have recurrence. That's how the posterior repairs and laparoscopy scores over the other repairs in terms of recurrence.
Yep.
Okay. So at this point, usually they will be asked about what is myopectineal orifice of Fouchard.
But it's the area where inguinal femoral and obturator hernias come from.
What are the
So
boundaries?
it's bounded medially by lateral border of rectus
Right?
and inferiorly by pectin line.
Okay.
Then laterally iliopsoas muscle and superiorly conjoint tendon.
Yeah, arching fibers of the conjoint tendon. It is something, you know, it's very difficult to imagine a myopectineal orifice. Though you can see in the books, uh, we will see books in a 2D picture. It's easy to write, but if you imagine on your own body, on a patient's body, the ring is vertical, oblique. You know, there are some horizontal borders, there are some vertical borders, very difficult to imagine. That the whole area is to be strengthened, that is the idea. So that idea is being used for laparoscopic hernia repairs, and there are some repairs called Ristopas or GPRVS. Do you have idea what is GPRVS? Giant prosthetic reinforcement of visceral sac. Okay, instead of telling inguinal hernia, they are telling visceral sac. That means reinforcement of the visceral sac. Visceral sac is hernial sac. That is, prosthetic reinforcement is just mesh. Giant is giant. So a big mesh is placed. So usually 1.5 to 2 centimeters from the both iliopubic, anterior superior iliac spine. From there to there, big mesh is placed from umbilicus to symphysis pubis. So the whole area is put mesh. That is GPR. Okay. So what else I left is McQuace repair. So McQuace repair, as I told already, instead of putting to inguinal ligament, they will suture to Cooper's ligament, which continues as iliopubic tract. Okay, imagine there is almost, they both almost are in parallel planes. Okay, if suppose the inguinal ligament is my index finger, and the middle finger is Cooper's ligament, which continues as iliopubic tract. So the junction will be the lacunar ligament. My web space is lacunar ligament. Okay, you would have read about inguinal ligament, medial, it becomes lacunar ligament.
Yes,
Yeah, that is a lacunar ligament, and posteriorly it continues as Cooper's ligament and iliopubic tract. Okay, so if you again remember femoral hernia, that forms the boundaries of or border of femoral ring.
yes, sir.
Anteriorly, inguinal ligament,
Inguinal ligament.
yeah, lacunar ligament, Cooper's ligament, and laterally it is the sheath
Separate.
separating the vein. Is it not?
Yes, sir.
So what happens is, if you put all the raphe or plasty using inguinal ligament, what happens to the ring? Imagine there is a ring and only the anterior part is being tied and tied. So that ring will become probably more lax because of sutures. It will pull more anteriorly and superiorly. So that was the idea of the McQuace repair, because they thought this is making the ring more wider. So in the idea of treating inguinal hernia, there might be chances of femoral hernia which is increasing. That was the idea which made the surgeons think in terms of more posterior repair, and they went and sutured to Cooper's ligament. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So that's about Cooper's ligament repair. What other repairs? What are the laparoscopic repairs, you know?
TEP and TAP, transabdominal.
Yeah,
Totally extra,
transabdominal.
totally extra peritoneal repair or transabdominal preperitoneal.
Yeah. So again here, both the planes are same. Transabdominal preperitoneal. That means you go inside the abdomen and come out to the preperitoneal layer. Totally extraperitoneal is you do not go inside, you are totally outside the peritoneum. Again it is preperitoneal. Extraperitoneal is again preperitoneal.
Yes.
So how to reach that area is technical thing which you need to, means for UG it is not a must, for if some PG is there. The rectus sheath is deficient halfway between the umbilicus and the symphysis pubis. The posterior rectus sheath is deficient. So near the umbilicus, if you put the telescope into the posterior rectus sheath and slide it between the umbilicus and symphysis pubis, there is no rectus sheath, that is called arcuate line. When you cross the arcuate line, posterior to the telescope, there is nothing, and that nothing is preperitoneal space, because you are behind the muzzle and there is nothing else, only peritoneal. So that's how you directly reach the preperitoneal space without cutting anything, without entering the abdomen. That is why it is called totally extraperitoneal. You are not cutting anything, just going into the space, putting the mesh and coming out. So technically it is more difficult. It is just like operating, you are plugging the ceiling hole from outside. From this, it means you go to the balcony or means over the terrace and imagine what is inside. It's very difficult. Means if I ask, if you are standing on a terrace, ask what is underneath you, it's difficult, even though you live in the same house for so many years, difficult to tell what exactly is there. So totally extraperitoneal repair, you are outside the peritoneum and you are operating for intra-abdominal contents. So technically that is more difficult. Transabdominal preperitoneum is you go inside, reduce the contents from natural means kind of routine laparoscopy, and then open the peritoneum and put the mesh. So their pre-peritoneal repair is only for placing the mesh. So technically that is little more easier when compared to this. So for PGs I am telling this TEP is though it is laparoscopic hernia repair, it does not fall into laparoscopic repair as such. So actually the terminology should be laparotomy means opening of the abdomen, laparoscopy means visualization of the abdomen. TEP does not visualize the abdomen at all, so it does not fall into category of laparoscopy, but it is used in common parlance as laparoscopy, but actual terminology to be used is endoscopic hernia repair. Okay, nowadays there are some meshes which are put inside the peritoneal cavity, and if you use such mesh and for hernia it is called IPOM. Yeah, intraperitoneal onlay mesh, not routinely used for inguinal region because you have to fix it, and there are a lot of vital structures you cannot fix so easily. You can fix only one side and other side is left open, so not really commonly used. So what else is there? Anything is left you can tell, or anybody feels anything we have not discussed in inguinal hernia, you can post. I might have not asked some classical questions because I know that you are all well prepared. So the idea of going for exams is prepare for the worst examiner. Imagine a more sadistic, um, you know, he has come only to fail you, suppose. Yeah. Imagine that examiner, whether he is existing or not. Prepare for that examiner, then your examination will be like a cakewalk. Currently, the corona is doing the same thing. Corona is helping all the students because though surgeons are told to be very egoistic, usually all the surgeons will come for passing. It is only with the students' dedication that they will fail. Otherwise, generally they don't fail. Okay, we are all very sweet persons. Usually we don't fail. Student will sometime, they will have dedicated efforts for failing. Whatever you ask, they will not tell. Like there was an instance, uh, I also studied in BMC. One of the classmates was asked several questions, and after repeated clues, there was no answer, and the examiner asked, "Okay, just show how did you check for cough impulse, and I will pass you." The student took out the stethoscope. So examiner went off. Okay, there are incidences like that. He thought it was cough impulse means respiratory system, so stethoscope was took out. Cough impulse was inspectory and palpatory finding. There are sometimes which happens like that. Other than that, is there any doubt? I was just passing some time to allow others to ask some doubt. Any other doubts are there? Otherwise, Mekhala seems to be well prepared for the presentation, or recently you are discussed somewhere or presented. Probably you are all ready for the questions. Or Corona is making you more studious, probably. But anyway, it is good preparation. Read more for the examination. Be prepared. Okay, if there are no doubts, shall we end the session?
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone. I have recorded.
Thank
I
you, sir.
will post this for the benefit of probably a revision or somebody who has not attended. I will send the link. You can watch later. If you have any doubts, you can always ask me. You can take my email ID, or I will post in the YouTube. You can put it there. Okay. Thank you all. See you.